Now, let's create our JavaScript file, which we would call script.js, and we'll link our HTML file to our JavaScript file. To do that, let's go right beneath our CSS link and we'll type script. We'll select from the option the one with the attribute src. We'll pass it in. Good. Now, very importantly, anytime we want to link an external JavaScript to our HTML this way, all we need to bring is the defer keyword. Now, if you hover over it, VS Code will bring a pop-up box educating you on why it is important. It's very key so that our HTML can load successfully without too many errors. Now, having done that, let's head back to our script.js and begin writing our JavaScript. We would want to import three things, or we want to select three things from the DOM. And the first one would be our text input over here. This text input, I misspelled that. Text input. This text input here, we would want to import that, as well as the check button. We would import our check button and our feedback class, this feedback right here. So let's go into our script.js and get them. We would use the query selector. So we'll first use const text input equals document and then we'll pass in the class. So we want to do that text input. Good. Oh, I used the wrong one. So let me just correct that. I think this is much better. Now, let's duplicate this code 2 times and change some things. To see whether we have imported the right things, let's log them to the console. I like to do this just to be sure that I'm importing the right things. So I'll just quickly import them and cross-check. Good. Let's move to our HTML. Open the console. Just simply right-click and go to inspect. Then we move to console. And there we have it. We can see it. We have our input, our button, and our paragraph text, our paragraph tag. So let's come back here, close this here. Let's come back, and then we take away this line of code. Now, what we want to do is that for our text input, we'll add an event listener, which will be the key app, such that anytime a user presses a key, we want to fire this callback function here. In our callback function, the first thing we will do, right, is to filter or remove every space in the input, because the user can pass a phrase, right? So we would want to remove every input in our phrase, and we will just access the value of our text input by using the value here, and we'll send everything to lowercase. This is a string method. The lowercase .value is a string method, and very thing we'll do is to use the replace string method as well. This will allow us to replace certain phrases with others. So we just pass in some regex here. I don't know if the pronunciation is right, but this is some regex. I saw this online, so I myself don't really know exactly what this regex means, but it works. I might read on it later. Feel free to read on it, and if you do find what it means or how to work with it, you let me know, right? I don't really know what this particular part means or how they came about it, but I know the replace string method will simply replace every space, right, with a character. Yeah, that's what I know it means. Sorry guys, I can't really explain that part of the project. I'm not there yet, I suppose. So let's see if it works. What we'll do is that we'll simply have to log our filtered input to the console. Boom. Now, sorry, if we do this, we are gonna have an error because we've not yet declared a filtered input. Usually we would have declared it as const filtered input, but we are gonna need this filtered input later on in our code, so and outside this block. So let's make it universal. Let's use the let filtered input rather. Now we won't have any errors in our code. Let's see if that works, if that's the case. So we inspect and we want to check our console, and yes, we first of all have to pass something into our input. So let's say race car, right? And let's go and inspect and see what it does. Good. You can see that the space between our race car has been removed. It has been removed. Are we on the same page? It has been removed. So the moment we do that, again, another thing we want to do when the user inputs a text is that we want to have a condition to check if filtered input, that means if we have an input value, right, because we store the value in this filtered input, we want to set the button class. We want to toggle the active of the button class, right? So we use active just like that. We didn't define this active class, so let's go back to our styles.css and let's define it. So we'll have it here as input box button, and for that we want the opacity to change from 0.7 to 1. So let's do this and we can see that that works, right? It works. Good. Else, if there is nothing in it, we want to remove the active from our class list. So I think we should rather use the remove and add instead of use toggle. So I'll change this line of code to add instead. Having done that, let's try it out and see. So RE, and this comes alive. Now let's take it out and we see that it goes back. I think it's working just like how we want it to work. So that's for the text input element. That's all the JavaScript will write for our text input. I think it's working just fine. And now let's do something about our button. When we click on it, let's specify the actions we want to take, right? So we are going to set an event listener on it. So add an event listener, and that event is going to be the click event. When we click on it, we want to fire this callback function here. Now we want to have a variable which is going to store the reverse of our input. Remember, a palindrome is a word or a phrase that reads the same way either forwards or backwards. So what we are going to do is that we are going to reverse that word with JavaScript, and we'll compare to see if it is true that they read the same way, right? So we'll use this line of code to reverse whatever has been passed into our input. Let me simply hit Alt Z so that my code will wrap onto the next line. Good. So I'm going to explain this line here. This filtered input is from here, the top here on my line 4. This is the reason why we declared it as a global variable instead of declaring it here. If we had declared it in this block of code, we wouldn't have been able to access it over here. That's why we took it there. Now, in this filtered input, what is stored here is the user input to lowercase with all the spaces inside replaced. So let me simply pass a comment here to make mention that it removes all the spaces, right? So removing all spaces. Good. From the input value. That said, so we have our input value here, and in this block of code right beneath the on line 17, we added an invert listener to our button such that when we click on it, the first thing we want to do is we want to split the word, right? This split is a JavaScript method that would split the word based on a character, right? And in this case, we didn't pass anything here, so each word will be split and placed into an array. So if we then let's take this out so that you can see how the split works. Yeah, what we want rather is this way. Good, I fixed that. So now let's log to the console reversed input, right? Good. Now if I come here and I enter a word, say code invasion, let's click on it and check what's in our console. We would see that we have an array containing 12 items, code invasion. So that's what the split does. It splits the characters and places it in an array. This reversed input is now an array. So what we will then do is that we'll now reverse our array. So let me cut this out and let's see what happens now. Let me put in the same text, code invasion, right? And if I click on our button, boom, you can see that N is now at position 1. Oh, so it has simply been reversed. It has been reversed. Now, we would use the join method to join it back into a string. So if we pass in the same text here, code invasion, and we click on the button, you see that it has been joined back into a string. That's what it does. That's what this line of code does. Having explained that, let's move on quickly so this doesn't turn out to be too long. Moving forward, we want to compare our filtered input to our feed, our reversed input. Now, if it is not the same, we want to toggle the active class on our feedback element. So feedback.classlist.toggle. Then we want to toggle the active. We have not yet created this active class yet. So what we will do is let's go back and create our active class. For the active class, we want to simply have, let's say, we want to display it block, right? We want to display it as a block element. And in the normal state, what we'll do is we'll take it out from there. So let's set the display to none. Good. Let's quickly move here. And we are back here. Okay. Having displayed a block, we want the inner HTML. We are going to set the text of our feedback to, let's say, yes, this is a palindrome, right? Let's simply do something like this. No. Then let's bring our span. Remember, we styled the span over there. Span is not a palindrome. Oh, I made a mistake here. So we simply put the user's input over there. We'll do text input dot value. This will be the value the user placed in our text input. Stay with me, we are almost done. Else if our filtered input is equal to our reversed input, what we want to do is we'll again toggle our feedback.class list. We want to toggle the active class. And set the inner HTML. So let's just copy this line of code here and we'll make a few changes. Boom. All right. So let's see how it works. Let's put race car. Check palindrome. Yes, race car is a palindrome. So now let's try code invasion and see if it's a palindrome. Oh, it's not. By the way, if you want to learn how to build many more HTML projects and CSS, and as well as some advanced concepts, remember to subscribe to the page. Check out the next tutorial, which is a character counter, and I'll see you in the next one.